Welcome to the Forging Podcast, where our mission is to forge guys into godly husbands, fathers, men, and leaders in their communities. We push out of our comfort zone, face our fears, and grow stronger every day. We strive to be selfless providers, dangerous protectors, loving husbands, fathers, and friends. I hope you all enjoy the podcast. Welcome back, guys, to the Forging Podcast. And we have the crew back together in the shooting house. I missed you guys last couple weeks.
Yeah, it's been
but you were gonna be able to make
since...
it, Brett. But then you had to. By the time we actually started recording, you had to take off because your wife
2
had
weeks
somewhere.
ago.
Yeah, 2 weeks ago, and then last week,
yeah,
it was just me and the goofballs out in the woods having a good time. That was, you know what, that was cool. That was really fun to do that.
Everybody looks a little older.
Yeah. Might have a couple extra sprigs of gray hair in my beard. But yeah, man, so it's good to be back with you guys, and this is going to be kind of a cool it's going to be a cool podcast because, you know, so today's Saturday, so we're right in the middle of Easter, the Easter holidays, and celebrating the death, burial, and resurrection of Jesus. And so we figured I know this is going to come out Tuesday, and we're kind of behind on times, but this is Saturday, and we're going to talk about it. So we're going to talk about the meaning of Easter and kind of go through the Word and just hit on it. And
me and Courtney was talking about Easter, the season of Easter and stuff, and as you kind of mature on this, and you've been on this journey a while, you start to realize Easter is used to, when I was younger, it was kind of one of the minor holidays.
Really?
Right?
Okay.
Yeah, because Christmas is the big one, you know, Thanksgiving and all this. But for Christians, this should be the biggest.
Yeah.
This is, you know, this is what the whole thing hinges on.
Yeah.
You know, and the last few years, we've been doing a Good Friday service, and it's heavy, it's heartbreaking, and then, you know, Sunday is party time.
Yeah.
You know, that's Victory Day.
Yeah.
And I really get pumped up about Easter, especially the last 3 or 4 years. Easter's very
just hitting harder.
Yeah, very special time of year.
Yeah. And the closer you grow to God, it's that closer that relationship is, the more meaningful it is too.
Yeah.
So yeah. How do we want to kick this off? Adam said something about getting started in the garden.
Yeah, so I guess, you know, I think just as we go through this, it would be helpful. I mean, I think it would be good just to, let's walk through the story with it. Walk through those last few hours. And so for some guys who are listening to this, you may have never read through the full account of what happened there. And if you haven't, this is a great weekend to do it. You know, this is a great time to do it. Pick a book, Matthew, Mark, Luke, John. They all have got a different account of the gospel. And each of them, like if you're wondering, especially if you're maybe a newer believer who's sitting there and starting your journey, they look a little different. All those books do. Every one of them look a little bit different. And so on the surface, you read it, and it's like, oh, are they contradicting themselves? No. It's just each of them were painting a different view. You know, the three of us sitting here to see something happen.
Yep.
And each of us are going to see a little something different.
Something is going to stand out more to me than it is somebody else.
Yeah.
You know, and I was either reading or I watched a documentary or whatever on how the Bible and some of these details that are slightly different is actually proof that it's legit. Because if they use the example of a courtroom, if everybody's story is exactly the same, then that points to that they've got together.
Yeah, it's been rehearsed.
Right, yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that makes sense.
So I think we'll just maybe, let's, you know, the the story of the whole thing of the cross goes back obviously a long time, but I think a good jumping point for us maybe would be, let's start in the garden and maybe let's just talk through, like, what happened there. What was it that stands out to you maybe from it? Because the same reason, Matthew, Mark, John, Luke, they all had different perspectives. I mean, we're all going to have, the three of us in here are going to have a different thing of what is it in that moment that really touches you. And for those listening, you're going to probably have it too. That thing that really stands out to you as you read through that. Mm-hmm. So, when you look at like what with the resurrection, with the crucifixion, the resurrection, it really began after Jesus had the instituted the Lord's Supper with his disciples, and then from that point, what they did, he knew the cross was coming. He knew it was almost time for this to happen. He knew his death was imminent, and so he asked his disciples to come with him to this place, the Garden of Gethsemane is what it was called, which was a private area outside of town, where apparently he had been going there a lot of times with his closest people. That's where they would go to. And he wanted to spend some time in prayer, right? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Like before he made before history changed the next day, he wanted to just really go and pour out in prayer. And that's what you see happening in the Garden of Gethsemane. But, as you turn, there's a few different areas that you can look at this at, but I'm going to, I guess, maybe start off. And let's find a. We got a passage pulled up with that.
I was looking for where he's sweating blood. Where is that?
Sweating blood. I think that's
44. Luke 22:44.
Yeah, read that.
So he's already done the Lord's Supper. They're in the garden praying. He's already told Peter he's going to betray him, just catching you up here. And 44 says, and being in agony, he prayed more. So he's already been praying earnestly, and his sweat was as it were great drops of blood falling down from the ground. Now, I've heard Justin talk about this before, and this is a medical condition when you're in, heavy stress, that this happens. And I think he even said last night this will be considered a medical emergency today.
Oh yeah.
So
sweating blood. Yeah.
So
get me to the doctor.
One of the things that we were talking about last night, after the Good Friday service, is in my mind when I was younger and not as mature in the faith, your mind think that he's dreading being nailed to the cross, the beating, all these things that happen, right? The physical is what you think he's dreading. But as I've studied and I've read more and more, I don't think that's what he's dreading. I don't think that's why he's in such agony. And I don't have the verses here on me, but it says that Jesus is, he's made sin. All the sin of the world is put on him. The Father turns his back on him. For the first time, the Father and Son are separated.
Yeah.
And we were talking about last night in the Bible when it says perish, that is separation from God. And this is the first time that this has ever happened between the Father and Son. And, from the sin of the world, we're talking about, like, when my boys tell a little white lie, or they hit their brother or sister, all the way up to Hitler, the sin of the whole world is put on him. There's something there, and my God, why have you forsaken me? There's something there that I don't think we fully understand. I think that's why he's in agony, because he knows what's coming.
Yeah.
And I don't think we fully comprehend. We focus on the cross, the beatings, the agonizing death. We focus on the physical, but I think there's a whole nother spiritual side that is far worse, and that's what he's in agony about. I think.
Yeah, I would agree with you. I mean, that makes sense.
Because Justin had brought up something that, Jesus, and I'm going to butcher how he was talking about it, but like, a lot of Christians, even after Jesus was resurrected and went back to heaven in that first century, a lot of Christians were beaten, tortured, put on crosses. They were all of those things happened. It was very common in that first century, and Justin had brought up there was records where they would be singing all the way to their crucifixion or singing all the way to their death.
Wow, yeah.
So it's almost like Jesus. Okay, well, if they could do that, Jesus? I mean, he obviously probably wasn't looking forward to having the nails driven and all of that.
Yeah.
But it's like you had mentioned. It's almost like there was something deeper that he was dreading. Because if believers could sing on their way to their death, Jesus could do that too. So there was something else that was just really that in the garden that night as he was sitting there knowing that this next morning he was about to walk that road and walk that journey. Like it's that I think that's what he was dreading though is I'm for a time I'm going to be separated from the Father. He has been in constant, like you see over and over again, where he could call out to the Father answers, and they're always in communion and connection. But then at that moment on the cross, when he did become sin, it was like that was where the Father wasn't looking back at that point. And so I think that definitely was where
his whole prayer here, all this prayer time in the garden in 42, just before that, it says, Father, if thou be willing, remove this cup from me. Nevertheless, not my will, but thine be done. So he's asking if there's any other way.
Yeah.
I don't want to do this. This is going to be awful. Yeah, he's asking if there is any other way that we can get this mission done. Please, let's do it in some other way. But then he surrenders, he surrenders himself to the Father's will. Nevertheless, not my will, but your will be done. So.
He was the only one still is the only one who really totally understood. I think the other part of it, to tying into it, he understands the wrath of God.
Yeah.
He's the only one that gets it. Mm-hmm. Like we can read about it, we can
talk,
we can
about
get a glimpse of it,
we can imagine, but
he was the only one who knows. Like it's almost sort of like that moment. Like I know what my daddy can do.
Yeah,
I know how my dad views it. Like it's sort of like when you're growing up as a kid. It's like maybe you and your friends are doing something not supposed to be doing, and it's like, oh man, I know how my dad feels about that. I know what my daddy will do if he, if I get caught. I know what my daddy will do, and it's almost that he's the only one who gets how his daddy's view on sin.
Yep.
And I just, I cannot imagine like sitting there, and then as you move through the garden, man, it's. He's praying with his disciples, and he brought, was it 3 of them that he really brought into the close?
Yeah,
he had all of them, and then he brought, was it Peter, John,
James and John?
Peter, James, and John, like we're in that close fellowship with them, and he asked them to pray, and what do they kept doing?
Falling asleep.
Yep.
How do you fall asleep?
I ain't gonna beat them up too bad. I might have.
I don't know, man.
I'm one of those
Leslie can attest that if I'm laying in bed and we may be praying, all of a sudden she hears.
Yeah.
Yeah, it could have been a long day, and they.
If I get still, yeah.
But in Luke, it says that pray that you may not enter into temptation.
Yeah.
So what's that temptation? Denying him and turning him in and.
Because he knew what they were about to go through too, right?
Yeah.
Like he was. Let's go to Luke 20.
Luke 22, verses. Well, the prayer in the garden starts on verse 39.
And yeah, he did. So he kept wanting them to, pray that you don't enter into temptation, because he knew that they were about to be faced with the denial. Their shepherd is about to get slaughtered. Like the leader of the group, who they've been following now for probably 3 years, is about to just be what happens next.
Yeah.
Like, and he know, man.
And he's been telling them this whole time, this is going to happen. But they still don't get it.
Because they still think there's a real physical kingdom about to come down, like at that point. Like he's about to pull out the sword. And
now, he knows what's fixing to happen, but they don't have their mind wrapped around it.
Yeah.
You know, they don't know what's going to happen. And, I've had this talk with a bunch of people. When he came 2,000 years ago, he comes as the sacrificial lamb. He comes to pay the price for sin, right? Mm-hmm. And so we get this view of Jesus of, you see it on stained glass windows where he's holding his head's, he's always very passive looking. He's holding a lamb, and all this. There's a whole nother side that we very rarely focus on. The wrath of God. Jesus and God are one. Jesus, Father, Son, Holy Spirit. Mm-hmm. And Adam was talking about the wrath a minute ago. There's a whole nother side, and they don't understand that when he's here the first time, he's here as the sacrifice. He's here to make the payment for sin, right? He's not here to set everything right by force. He's not coming as the conquering king the first time, right? And they don't know that.
Yeah. And Peter's always, great example. He's always looking for the fight. He's like, okay, let's fight, God. Let's fight. Where are we got? When we fighting?
When we overthrowing Rome is what everybody wants to know. Because that's what they think he's coming to do. Mm-hmm. But they just still don't have their minds wrapped around what he's actually fixing to do. And I think that's probably, I'd have to go back and study to be 100% sure, but when he's praying for him not to fall into temptation, he knows what's coming, what's fixing, and he's praying for them as well as praying for himself. And one of those verses say, an angel comes and strengthens him, Yeah,
I had it right here.
43, right before 44.
Then an angel appeared to him from heaven, strengthening him, and being in agony, he prayed more earnestly. Then his sweat became like great drops of blood falling down to the ground. Wow.
While they're in their garden too, it's like crazy. You brought up Luke 22, and as you keep going through that, it says, while he was still speaking in verse 47, a crowd came, and one called Judas, one of the 12, was preceding them. He approached Jesus to kiss him, but Jesus said to him, Judas, are you betraying the Son of Man with a kiss?
He called him out.
Man, he did.
Man. Well, he told him he was going to do it.
And in our language, in our culture today, how do you think he's saying that?
I mean, it comes off as he's calling him out. Oh, so you're betraying me with a kiss? Huh?
Yeah,
that's how it's done, huh?
What the heck, man?
Like, you could have just said that's the guy, but no, you're gonna walk up and kiss me and try to keep it discreet, but it's not.
And like when it says while he was still speaking, behold, a crowd come. Like, I had read something a while back where where the Garden of Gethsemane is located in Jerusalem, it's like you go down a little hill out of the city and then come back up, and you could see you could see them coming. The mob was coming in the middle of the night with their torches and stuff. You could see them just slowly making their way up to the garden. And it's like, I cannot imagine. And then last night at our Good Friday service, one of the videos, just going back to everyone has a little thing that stands out to them. One of the videos when they were in the garden and they walk up and Judas sort of steps forward. And I cannot imagine, because Judas had been with these guys for the entire time.
Yep.
Mm-hmm. He was the money guy. So he was like the I'm not saying one is more trusted than the other, but if you got the guy who you've handed the bank account to handle your ministry, that guy's trusted, like among the
You would
disciples.
think, yeah.
Yeah.
And it's like that moment, they're all sitting there, and he steps forward, and I can't even imagine like what all the other the disciples are sitting there thinking, like their whole world just got rocked right there, because the guy that they've been with just steps forward, and it's like almost like everything that they've believed in that moment probably started feeling like almost like a lie.
Yeah.
Jesus, he's not supposed to get arrested. They forget that he's been telling them all these things.
Yeah.
But it's like, this is not supposed to happen. This can't be the plan. Judas is not supposed to betray. Like, he's one of us. It's like everything just starts shattering, I would imagine, for them.
Yeah.
And I think that's probably why
Yeah.
Jesus
It's all
would-
falling apart on
Yeah.
Which is, I just can't get why he would betray him.
So you
And I know it had to happen, but
We'll take a side trail on Judas for a minute
Yeah.
because I have actually thought about this a lot. At one point, I thought that Judas might actually be in heaven. And I'll walk you through my thought process on that.
he might be.
But there's one scripture that says Satan enters him, you know, and my thought process is this has to happen. It's prophesied in scripture,
Yeah.
right? So afterwards, after he does it, Judas, in Matthew it says he repented himself in the King James version, and he goes and hangs himself.
Yeah.
You know, and to me that looks like a repentant heart. That looks like a broken heart. But then you see other ones like in John. John is, you know, he's pretty hard on Judas. You know, and Jesus says it would be better for him to have never been born and things like that.
Yeah.
You know, so I really, I'd have to get back in study on Judas again, but after I did more study on it, I was like, I don't know. You know,
See,
it
I'm
seemed
following
to me,
more on the maybe he wasn't ever the whole time.
yeah, because it says
to
the
me.
devil, Satan, entered him. You know, so you would think that he's not really in this for the right reasons if he's already vulnerable. I don't know, but
That's a hard one.
it
That
is
is a hard
yeah.
one. But I mean, just being part of the disciples and being part of everything that Jesus has been doing and seeing it all, you would just think, because it's like
would
he went
think.
out of his way to turn him in. It wasn't like,
He sought them
just-
out to, like,
yeah.
you know.
yeah. So
Make
he's,
some money
he's
off
like,
of
oh, I'm
this.
gonna see what kind of money I can. I mean, Jesus is fixing to be gone, so I might as well make some money off of this or whatever. I don't get it. That's just insane. He could have easily just wandered off somewhere and just been away from everything. Or
Yeah,
what-
just
what
like
I
go
mean?
away.
Yeah.
Just
Like, go away.
kind of hide in a sense. But no, he's like, oh no. Instead,
I'm gonna make a quick.
I'm gonna make a
Buck
quick
off
buck
of this.
and then sell them out. Like
Yeah.
it's just insane to me.
Yeah.
I know it had to happen. I get it, but it's. don't know.
That is a hard one, man. Because I've struggled with that. Okay, was he saved? Was he not? Was he?
Yeah.
I've been back and forth for a long time.
Was
on
he
that.
fully in? You know, you would think because they've been following
For a
him
while.
for 3 years, right?
One thing I do like, there is a little heart glimpse at one point, and we all, you know, it's hard to point out just little things because we all have little things. But
Yeah.
I don't know where the verse is, but at one point there was a thing where the woman had come and broke the vial and started washing
Yeah,
Jesus'
yeah.
feet, where you get a little bit of glimpse at Judas's heart right
Yeah.
then, because he starts saying like, "It could have been sold and
Yeah.
undone this." Like
Money was a
that's
priority
money.
to him.
Like yes, money was maybe his God. Like
Yeah.
at that point, and you just get that. You don't get a whole lot of glimpses of Judas up until then, but that's the one little glimpse you get of him. is
Yeah.
he was throwing a fit because this woman who was just worshiping Jesus, she threw the money away. We could have done something else with that. I don't
Yeah.
know. It's just
So, like you're saying,
he's a
money,
hard one though.
money was
Yeah.
kind of an idol to him.
It seems that way.
It seems that way. Yeah.
But as you keep on going through the garden, you know, the last piece to me, if you turn over to John 18, that, man, this part is, we were talking about this before the we started recording. But John 18, when the Judas and them came up to him, says they answered him in verse 4. So Jesus, knowing all the things that were coming upon him, went forth and said to them, "Whom do you seek?" And they answered and said, "Jesus the Nazarene." And he said to them, "I am he." And Judas also, who was betraying them, was standing with them. And so when he said, "I am he," they drew back and they fell to the ground.
Yeah.
Nobody talks about that. Have y'all?
Because I think that's just those little pieces.
I had never heard that until I read it myself. You know?
Really?
Yeah. And that's, he says, "I am he," and they, I don't know how.
I don't even know. Is that included in the I? You always talk about the I am statements. I don't know if that's ever even included in those I am statements because I've never had really.
Yeah.
I don't know, but that's an I am statement. I am he.
Mine says, this is KJV. They went backward and fell to the ground. So this, I need to look at other translation, but it's almost like when he says "I am he," there's power that comes out
from that name.
It blows them back.
There's power in the name of Jesus.
And
yep.
After that happens, I'm going to put myself in the soldiers right there.
I'd be out of there.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking.
If he said "I'm he" and I fell to the ground, all right, I'm sorry, Jesus. I ain't messing with you.
Have a good night. I am sorry.
Yeah. Excuse us.
Yes.
We got the wrong house.
I'm going to go somewhere else.
My bad.
And then Peter cutting his ear off, which is, that's that would be something. Not that I would typically. I'm not saying I would lean towards violence necessarily, but that's something that I feel like I might do. Just very impulsive.
Chopping ear off.
It was like it's fight time.
Yeah.
And
he probably went to cut his head off, and the guy probably moved and swing.
And Peter's all the time got these things. When he's on the Mount of Transfiguration, he starts saying, he's like, "This is good that we're here. Let's build a house here, and we can all just, And then it's almost like I forget exactly what happened. But it's almost
God calls down.
Yeah, and it's like shut up, Peter.
Peter. Literally, the voice of heaven comes down at that moment. Like,
It's like you don't get it. Just
hush.
This is another Peter moment.
Yeah.
Where he pulls out and it's fight time, and in his mind, he's like, "No, I'm going to the death here for you. We're gonna fight." And Jesus is like, "No, you don't get it.
Stop.
Yeah, stop." And puts the ear back on.
Well, and think about that too. These soldiers are coming to take Jesus. They're probably hard-hearted. They're thinking this dude deserves whatever. Like, who knows what's going through their mind at the time. But the fact that he goes, "I am he," and they fell to the ground. It was almost like an opportunity for them to say, "This is the guy."
Yeah.
That everybody's saying he is.
Yeah.
And then to have the dude's ear whacked off and
Yeah.
put back on. I mean,
at that
it's
moment,
almost
it's like, what the heck?
It's like it's almost like I've heard stories of people when they're on their deathbed, and it's like right before they cross over, it's like they are given one last opportunity to accept Jesus. In a sense,
that's what it's sort of.
It kind of seems that way. Like this is.
But if they don't go through with their duties, they may be killed. I don't know.
Well,
I don't know how all that works, but just giving them a little bit from their perspective,
sure.
they may say, "Well, we got to do this," or,
or
we're going to be executed,
But it doesn't take away the fact that they might say, "This is the guy."
Yeah.
And they feel bad, but they haven't had this long relationship with them to betray whoever the head dude,
But I tell you, I'm thinking like we started with this. As soon as that happens, and that just him saying "I am he" blows me back to the ground, I'm out.
Yeah, I'm sorry, Jesus. Yeah. I get it now. It's taken me a while to get there, but now I understand.
Because those soldiers who come with them that night, the mob, and whatever, they've heard about him. everyone had heard.
Everybody's
about him.
heard about him.
Yeah,
at that
everyone
point.
had been hearing what he's doing, and they know who they're going to arrest. They know what they're doing.
Yeah.
And it's like, man, that would have terrified me at that moment.
Yeah, and you see that with Pilate. You know, like Pilate's, he don't want to do it. They pass him back and forth to Herod. Nobody really wants to mess with this except for the extreme, the Pharisees,
Yeah.
the religious. Nobody really. Pilate don't want nothing to do with this, and you can see it. I think if my memory recalls, I think he was fearful about it, and his wife even tells him, "Look, I've had dreams about this. Don't have anything to do with it."
Yeah. Stay away.
And then they appeal to it. They start threatening him, say, "If you don't go with this, then you ain't no friend to Caesar." And they press that politician button.
Yeah.
And
Well, that's a good
fear
sort
of man kicked in.
Yeah,
Fear of man kicked
that's a
in.
good. Y'all want to shift sort of into the trial stage of
yeah, we can.
I think that's a good. Now that sort of we brought Pilate up, I think that covers most of the garden. Let's sort of shift into that part of it.
It keeps saying that he don't see what's wrong. I find no fault in this man.
Yeah. Well, what about when Peter denies him?
Yeah,
Like, how crazy. Now, I
That's
guess
ju-
I could
that's just
see
fear.
that. I could see that over betraying him.
yeah. I
Like,
think that
this
was
dude's
what he
going
was
out of his
praying
way. Judas is going out of his way to make some money off this this deal. But Peter, he's seeing what's happened. I think it's all clicking at that point. Like, what Jesus has been saying, all these things are starting to add up, and he's like, shoot, like, this is getting for real.
Yep.
And so I could see the fear getting in the way, and
I think we could all
keeping-
be Peter that night.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah, 'cause I don't want to die.
That's just fear,
Yeah.
and we all deal with fear.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, just like you're saying, if they see him being drugged, we're going to kill him, crucify him. I mean, who wants to be crucified?
No,
you know?
and
And
that's
he's-
been a theme for other Christians, is to be crucified, and I'm sure they have all seen the effects of what all that looks like. So they're thinking, well, shoot, if I get connected with this guy, that's going to be
That's
me,
gonna
and I'm
be
not
me.
prepared for
Yep.
something like that.
Yep, that's right.
So yeah, I could see the denial over betrayal, which maybe denying is betraying in a way, but
Hey, I've never noticed this. So speaking of Peter, so we've moved into the courtyard now.
Okay.
So we've moved from the garden. Now we're in the courtyard. We're getting ready to start the trials. Jesus is getting hauled around. Peter's doing the denial. John 18:25. Now Simon Peter was standing, warming himself. So they said to him, "You are not also one of his disciples, are you?" He denied it and said, "I am not." Never noticed this. One of the slaves of the high priest, who was a relative of the one whose ear Peter cut off, said, "I did not." Didn't I see you in the garden? I didn't know this. It's a relative. Like,
I don't know you. Aren't you the dude that just chopped his ear off? What do you mean?
that was he just chopped my cousin's ear off. Like, I mean, that was what he was. And then Peter's like, "No, that's not
That's
me.
not
I don't
me.
know
It's
that
my
guy."
twin. It's my twin. I don't
I've
know.
never noticed that it was the first person who asked
Yeah.
Peter was a relative of the guy who had his ear chopped off. Like, he was right there too with him. I've never noticed that.
Immediately the rooster crowed. Yeah.
And I don't know which one it is, but like when he was there and Peter was denying him, I don't know which passage exactly, if it's Matthew, Mark, Luke, or John that talks about it, but there's one where all of the chaos in the courtyard is going on. Peter denies him, just like Jesus said he would. The rooster crows. And there's a spot there that says that Jesus looked up
Yeah,
and saw
I think
Peter.
that's in Luke.
Okay.
Yeah, I was going to bring that up too. So he's in eye shot of him, and I don't know if you want to try to find that real quick while I'm talking, but basically he, after he denies him the third time, Jesus
22.
looks at him.
60.
You got it?
Yeah.
Go ahead and read it.
All right, but Peter said, "Man, I do not know what you're talking about." And immediately, while he was still speaking, a rooster crowed. And the Lord turned and looked at Peter. And then Peter remembered the word of the Lord, how he had told him, before the rooster crows today, you will deny me 3 times. And he went out and wept bitterly.
So, in that moment, I don't think that Peter realizes that's necessarily what he's doing. Mm-hmm. He's just trying to save his own skin.
Yeah, he's in a fight or flight.
Nah, that wasn't me, and that wasn't me. That was somebody else or whatever. And he's not really, it's not registering with him that he is denying Christ. Mm-hmm. He's just thinking he's trying to weasel his way out of this situation, right? And then Jesus looks at him, makes eye contact with him,
Man,
and it's like
yeah, see, I told
almost
you,
like, I told you would.
I cannot imagine.
And then he immediately comes to his attention that he has just denied him 3 times, and he goes out and weeps bitterly.
Oh yeah, because it's like, man, how could I do this?
Yeah, how did I do that?
Because he didn't believe it when it was prophesied.
Yeah, he never thought he would have done that. And in his defense, he backs that up, really. Because in his mind, he's going to the death with him. Well, he pulls out his sword, and it's fight time. We're going to die right here, And I'm going to go ahead and get started.
Yeah.
And so I believe that he's
he meant it when he said it.
Yeah, he meant it. He's honest. He meant it when he said it. But then we get in these situations where we're not aware of what we're doing so much, and then he's denying Jesus, and Jesus looks at him and he's like, crap, I did it.
Yeah.
I just, what's crazy to me about that part of it is Jesus is being hauled around, beaten in this time. He's getting all this stuff going on. And Jesus still knows where Peter is in the middle of all that chaos.
Yeah.
Peter is off trying to stay off to the side. He's just off to the...
Mm-hmm.
And Peter knows, or Jesus knows exactly where Peter is enough to look over and see him. And I don't think it was probably like an angry look at him. I think it was just sort of like a...
Mm-hmm.
Sort of one of those, like, I don't know if disappointment or just, this is what we talked about.
Yeah.
This is what I warned you.
That's the way I said it.
It had to be.
I don't think it was anger.
Yeah.
I don't think it was like a...
And I don't know that it was disappointment either, just because he knew. Like,
he knew.
It was one of those things that had to happen, kind of thing.
Yeah.
So it's just like, this is what we talked about. So,
but I just can't imagine that look. Like, it's almost like when you're, again, going back to your parents, like when they look at you and you just know something. I mean, like, there's that look. Like, it's like, yeah, I get it.
And we see this later, but this is kind of reassuring. And he's saying, "Say, I told you." He reminded him. You remember I told you were going to deny me. Mm-hmm. And then we see, this is jumping way ahead to after the resurrection and stuff. We see a change in Peter, and he is boldly committed. He's not scared of being crucified anymore. And, this is all that Babylon Bee video that Justin sent us. That's all evidence that the disciples seen these things. This is real, because it's doing a sarcasm thing of we're gonna fake this. We're gonna hide his body and tell everybody he rose. And what are we gonna get for it? We're gonna be brutally murdered.
It was a funny video. Like, look up Babylon Bee in that video. It's great. It's just it's hilarious. But so he's denied him. Jesus is going now getting. You had brought up that he was sort of getting passed around Pilate to he's going before the Sanhedrin, which was like the Jewish council, the Jewish priest, the Jewish ruler, or judge at that point. He's just getting bounced back and forth around to these different people. And when you go to Pilate, you had mentioned, I've got mixed feelings about Pilate too. That's one that I like go back and forth on Pilate, because he does start out with this whole, man, I don't want to do this.
Yeah.
And I think he knows that he doesn't want to do it. His wife tells him he's trying to get out of it any way he can. And I think throughout it, you see where it says that he's trying to get him, he tries to give him just enough that it'll be enough.
Yeah.
to let him go.
Yeah, like he sends him for the flogging, the beating, and then he brings him back out, and he's hoping that'll satisfy him,
Yup.
and of course it don't. And then he gives him the choice of Barabbas or Jesus. He's trying every which way he can to get out of this.
But then you get to a part in Matthew 27, if y'all want to turn there. And this is, I think, I don't know if it's sort of like, it's almost, I don't know what the word I'm looking for. It's almost like prophetic of what we try to do. And it's almost a symptom of what we try to do. But Pilate tried all of that. He mentioned he tried to offer him Barabbas. And starting in verse 22, when Pilate saw that he was accomplishing nothing, but rather that a riot was starting, he took water and washed his hands in front of the crowd, saying, I am innocent of this man's blood.
Mm-hmm.
That statement, man, that was the point where he was trying. And this could be a whole nother thing in itself, but he was trying to, at that point, play the middle ground.
Yeah.
I'm innocent. And that's almost like, we do that too. I'm innocent of Jesus. I didn't do it. I wasn't the one that nailed him to the cross. It wasn't me.
Mm-hmm.
I wasn't the one that crucified him. But that was somebody else. The Jews did it. The Romans did it. The guy down the street who's got the addiction, the one cheating on his wife down there, he did it. He crucified him. And I don't know, Pilate. At that point, it's like the politician came out.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and he could have easily just said, "No, he's innocent, and I'm letting him go." But instead, he let the people decide. Well, that's not the job of the people. He was to decide, and he took the coward way out, and just gave them what they wanted, and had an innocent man. Though we know it had to happen, it's man.
Brother Sam had brought up in a sermon last week, I think he was talking about with him, that the people, Pilate was able to hold firm until they brought up, well, if you do this, if you don't give us this, then you're no friend of Caesar.
Yeah. They pushed
he
that.
He feared Caesar more than he did God.
They pushed the
found
one
that
button.
nerve.
Yeah.
Yep.
And we've all, and going back to the other side, to not just throw Pilate to the wolves there, we've all got that little nerve.
Probably,
That if someone knew which button, and Satan knows which buttons it is.
Yeah.
That's why he goes after us the way he does. That he can push that one thing and say, okay, this is his weak point.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And he found Pilate's, which was, you're no friend of Caesar's. Well, if you're no friend of Caesar's and you're a Roman governor, that's not a real good place to be at.
Yeah, it's not a good place to be.
Yeah, because he probably could have got put to death.
Uh-huh. Caesar was not really known for being
A nice guy.
nice, gentle, and they would constantly kill each other if they thought anyone was against them or a threat. Man, I'm innocent of this man's blood, though.
What happens next, staying in Matthew, is Jesus is mocked by the soldiers. I can't help but wonder if some of these same soldiers were the ones that went and got him. Because this is a bold move after what they've seen.
Yeah, I would have to assume that it'd be different soldiers.
You would think.
I mean, so just putting myself in that place, if I was a soldier, went out to get him, saw, one, I got knocked down just by him saying, I am he, then seeing him heal an ear, I'm not going to be, I'm going to be finding a way to be in the very far background.
We've already covered that. We're out.
Yeah.
I ain't got nothing to do with this.
So I'm sure there's tons and tons of soldiers.
You would think.
So these are probably other ones that didn't see those things and still have that, I guess you would say, chip on their shoulder towards Jesus.
Yeah, and they're making fun of him, putting on the
robe.
the purple, the crown of thorns, hail, King of the Jews, And these are soldiers, right?
And they even spit on them through that.
They're
I can't see the guys that had that experience doing that.
You wouldn't think.
Now they're probably hiding in the background, but I can't see them coming up and doing all of those things.
If I was those soldiers who arrested him, I would have been like, just imagine cuffing them after that or putting the chains on them. It's like,
I'm sorry, Jesus. I got to do that.
Yeah, I'm so sorry.
I'm sorry.
I'm so sorry.
hey, a little
That would be me. I'm sorry, Jesus.
a little call out there. You know, the crown of thorns, and this is just Adrian Rogers, one of the those giants like of the faith. I read a sermon that he did a long time ago, and it was talking about that verse right there. And after twisting together a crown of thorns in Matthew 27:29, that ties all the way back into Genesis 3:18, where God said, "I'm going to grow you thorns and thistles and stuff." And it's sort of a almost like a tie back into Jesus is wearing the consequences of sin on his head. I never really had thought about that until I read that sermon.
I never thought about that.
Genesis 3:18, though, it talks about that he was going to grow because of the sin of Adam. Thorns and thistles are going to grow for you, and now he's wearing that on his head.
Heck, I never had.
Wow, that's
I never
crazy.
made that.
That was just one of those. There's so much. I mean, so many things
Oh,
you can
there's
pull
so
out.
so much.
But because the crown of thorns, at one point, that it just seems like, well, that's random, but nothing's random with God. Mm-hmm. It ties all the way back to the original sin and the consequences of it, which was for Adam, it was thorns. That was the thing that he was the most. He was going to experience death, but the thorns were going to be the everyday thing that just. He went from the perfect paradise to now I've got to deal with thorns every day as I do my work. I've got to, and now Jesus wore them on his head. So.
Wow.
Didn't mean to derail. That was a little note I had in there that was.
All right, so we talked about them mocking him, spitting on him, putting the thorns on his head. And now, now I got to get back here. Yeah, so they spat on him, took the reed and struck him on the head. They not only did they put that crown of thorns, but they took this reed and hit him in the head with it. Just driving, that's driving them thorns deep into his scalp.
Last night during I don't know if you noticed it, Brett, but like as we was doing the Good Friday service and some of the videos from the Passion of the Christ movie were playing, I had looked over and like some of those, the younger kids, it almost summed up what was going through my head. I didn't cover my eyes, but they were over there, and they were some of the ones in the front row were covering their eyes because it was it was hard to watch. That's what I felt like. Man, this is hard to watch.
Yeah. Dak said it last night. He said I closed my eyes a few times. And, a lot of people, Courtney was saying she was thinking about putting out a disclaimer for little kids or whatever. Now, I know my view's different on especially my boys about violence and that kind of thing. But in this scenario, the Passion of the Christ, I'm thinking, no, they need to see it. They need to know. We all do.
Yeah.
We don't need to just brush this over like this was a quick, easy, pretty clean death, because it wasn't.
No.
We need to feel the weight of that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's and me and Courtney talked about it, and of course, everybody's different, and I'm not going to say what somebody allows their kids to see, but my kids are going to watch that.
Because it is hard to watch, and it should be
Yep.
hard to watch.
That's right.
That was the intent.
Yeah.
Because we can read about it, and sometimes we can allow our imaginations to create what we kind of want it to be.
Mm-hmm.
But seeing it, and even on the Passion of Christ, it probably still doesn't quite grasp
I'm sure
the intensity.
it don't. Yeah.
But it does a
Pretty
good job of doing it.
Yeah.
I mean, it's giving us a really good picture into the suffering that he went through and the beating and the just. Man, I just...
Because I think,
there's no way I would even... If I knew I had to go through that, I would do everything I possibly could to not.
Yeah.
It's not... I wouldn't be praying, well, if it's your will, take this cup from me. But if it's your will, God, I'd be like, God, look,
Take this cup from me.
homie can't handle this, so I'm out. I mean, let's just face the facts.
Yep.
But I think like even with kids and stuff, because and I know that is a hard, and trying to figure out like or word that line is, but because I think we grow up and all the storybook versions of the thing, everyone's smiling, everyone's you've got the cartoon picture, and I know you've got to have that to be able to teach that age group. I totally get that.
Yeah.
But sometimes I think the smiles take over I think it does. You do need to be reminded of that. Like,
Yeah.
what is this? Was Justin had said it yesterday? What it wasn't really a Good Friday.
Yeah. I mean, this was
it was-
ugly. You know.
That's just it's good because of what comes. But man, that term it's hard to throw around Good Friday. Like just 'cause,
Really? Yeah, it really is.
And that song, Phil Wickham does. I mean, it's just perfect the way he did those lyrics. Friday is only good because Sunday is coming.
Yeah,
You know.
because if Sunday didn't come,
Yep.
man, that's deep. That's some deep hitting stuff. Because man, I think through a lot of the violent movies and stuff that go on, and it almost becomes numbing,
Yeah.
And
Absolutely.
so like this guy did nothing. In the violent movies, the bad guy, gets shot. He gets whatever. Like, he deserves it. This dude was healing people and bringing life to people and love and showing love and just mercy. It's just perfect man.
Yep.
And like, no, you're dead. Like, that's, and not only not know you're dead, but I mean, they probably beat him and treat him worse than some of these hardened criminals. Well, I mean, they let one guy go.
Yeah.
But I mean, what about the other guys on the cross? The other two guys on the crosses, like, they probably didn't get beat and tortured and treated as bad as Jesus did
Yeah.
before they got hung up there. Yeah, they all hung together, but they probably didn't get put through what Jesus did before he even had to get to that point.
Yeah. I don't know. You always see it pictured as they didn't get the flogging. And I don't know if
And maybe they did, but
Yeah, I don't know
I
if
bet
they
it
did or
still
not.
wasn't to the extent.
Yeah.
Like, and that just shows too that the religious people, like even Pilate didn't want to put him to death. He's not a Christian. He's not a good, godly man. But the highly religious, the godly people, were like, no, this dude's got to get run through the ringer because.
Well, he's changing everything,
Yeah, but-
and they're afraid they're going to lose their influence, their power, and that's why they got to kill him in their mind. They got to snuff this.
Yeah, because they were like
they
they were
even say
little
it.
gods. They were little gods.
Yeah, they even say it. I think it's after he raises Lazarus. If we don't do something, everybody's going to be following him. I don't know what verse that is, but they even say it.
Yeah.
And I don't know how we got to talking about that, but somebody who's not necessarily a follower, he's not really connected. He can see this guy hadn't done anything to deserve this.
Yeah.
That's Pilate's position. I find no fault with this man. And they don't want nothing to do with it, but they, there again, they found that pressure point.
Yeah.
And
They touched
got
it.
it done.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
Man.
it had to happen. So
It had to happen.
and it's pretty crazy the way it did happen.
I want to point out something on the had to happen part, and I guess sort of moving into as we start moving toward it we move to the cross there. He's went through the trials, then he has to carry the cross, and then I just have this mental picture of him being led through the streets, like, and everyone's just my mental image is people lined up on the streets and hurling abuse, and I think it says that in there that people were hurling abuse and they were hurling insults as he's making his way to the cross, and he's almost like being paraded through the. I don't know what song, but they led him through the streets in shame. What was that? What song is that off of? can't remember, it's an old hymn. But, they were carrying him to the cross. But in Colossians 2, there was a verse that someone pointed out to me a long time ago, and it's always stood out. Colossians 2:15, it says, when he had disarmed the rulers and the authorities, he made a public display of them, having triumphed over them through him. And what that verse on the surface is like, what is that talking about? But basically what it's saying there is a direct tie into, in those days, the Romans, when you would defeat an enemy, you'd have someone like Jesus, the prisoner. You would parade them through the streets, let everyone see you're the victor. We're gonna show you what we captured, what we're killing. It's almost like a cat bringing their kill up to your doorstep to show it off. But really what it's talking about here is in verse 15, when he had disarmed the rulers and authorities. It says he disarmed them. Then it says he made a public display of them, having triumphed over them through the cross. He was the one leading them through the streets. He was the one leading them to the cross. He was the one who was disarming them. And it felt the total opposite of that, though. It felt like they were in control. Yeah. But Colossians was talking about he was really the one who was in control. He was the one who was taking them on parade. He was parading sin through the street.
Wow.
I'm taking them, sin, captive right now to the cross. And I had never thought about that before, but it was a victory parade, but not in the sense that you would think.
Oh, what they thought.
Yeah. It was him parading them.
Well, yeah, and think about it. Reality is he could have called down the legions of angels and wiped them all out, and he didn't because he was in line with God's will.
Yeah.
I do wonder, you see sort of that side-by-side frame throughout a lot of times of, the devil coming in and trying to tempt and doing different things. I just would wonder, was the devil, and just, we don't know the answer, so I'm just curious y'all's thoughts. Was the devil excited? Was Satan excited as he made his way to the cross, or was it this moment where he's like, no, stop, we can't do this? I don't know. What was the...
Okay, so I don't have any scripture to back this up, but I will tell you what my thinking is. I'm thinking that they don't understand what's happening either. We got demons and they're throwing out, and we got where he approaches the guy who's demon possessed, and he's like, why are you here? The demon's talking to Jesus. So why are you here? Have you come to torture me before the time? And they're scared of him. I don't think they understand, because they're asking him, why are you here?
Yeah,
they know who he is. And I don't think they understand what's going on. And I think that they thought
they won.
Yeah. I don't know if they thought they won completely, because I think that he's probably aware that he's fighting a losing battle. But ever since he's thrown out, he's taken his vengeance on God by trying to tear down humanity. That if he can't hurt God, he can hurt
creation.
He can hurt what God loves.
But and I don't think he can see the big picture either. They're just seeing what's in the moment. Well, yes, we're winning because we're destroying this. They don't see the big picture until Jesus went to the cross, and then it says that he defeated hell and the grave. And that's probably when reality kicked in. But until then, they only see what's directly happening at that moment. In front of them. Their whole mission is to destroy whatever God's created.
Yeah.
And so that's what they're accomplishing, quote unquote, right there. But it's just,
and I'll tell you the reason why go ahead.
So going back to what my train of thought was, and y'all can, but I had another thought. If God is human now, if the Son of God is here, and they can manipulate and control people or whatever, let's hurt him. This is their best opportunity to hurt God, right?
Yeah.
Because he's in flesh now. I don't know that they ever thought that they were going to get total victory. I just don't see how Satan could ever think that. Maybe he did. Maybe that's how he got through out in the first time. he thought he could win, and we see that he's fought Michael and the angels and he gets through out. But that may be in Revelation. I don't know.
Yeah.
But I'm getting wrapped around the axle here. I'm just thought processing. So
Yeah.
go ahead.
No, well, like, and this is a total rabbit trail, so that we might need to, yeah, I got us off track there, but it just, I don't know, I just wondered that, because then you hear about when Jesus would be telling the people, I'm gonna, they're gonna tear this down and I'll be rebuilt in 3 days. I wonder, like, okay, did Satan, when Jesus died, did Satan believe that he's, there's so much to unpack there that, like, did Satan believe he was going to come back in 3 days, or was he like,
well,
I don't know.
And if
but this could
I
literally
can't
be
help
a
but
good
think,
joke.
like, if Satan knew the outcome, for instance, if he really understood the outcome, he probably wouldn't have done
it.
Yeah.
Yep.
Because now he's at a disadvantage even more.
Yeah.
He thought he was at an advantage, but if he really understood what was fixing to happen to him even further, he I don't see him
Yeah.
pushing it.
I don't either.
going through
And
it.
that's kind of what I was saying.
Yeah.
I don't think they understood
Yeah.
what
What
was
was
happening.
Because they only see what's in the moment.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we're at the crucifixion. He's nailed to the cross. It's like, I mean, I guess this is like that moment in history where everything changes. Like
Yeah.
everything changes.
And the evidence is everywhere. We got an earthquake. We got complete darkness. And I've heard on documentaries or somewhere that in other parts of the world that they record around the same time period of having complete darkness. So it was like the whole world,
Wow.
as best we can tell. And, I wanted to talk about we wasn't recording when we were talking about the, my God, why have you forsaken me? Were we recording when
I think we were. I think,
I don't remember.
I don't know, but if you
I
want to
don't
go back
think
to
we
it.
were.
Okay.
Well,
But,
go hit it again.
because I was telling you that's what I wanted to talk about.
Yeah.
Yeah, we were, because I was. Anyway,
Just hit it again, and we know
So-
for sure.
Yeah, that's right.
so like there's something else here that we don't understand. We always think about the crucifixion, the nails, the beatings, all that stuff. But when the Father turns his face away and that communion is broken, that relationship is broken, there's something there. And I think this is him crying out, why have you forsaken me? And, I think that's in the prophecy that he's in Psalms where he says that. So that goes back to a prophetic thing. But, he's done nothing wrong, yet the sin of the world is laid on his shoulders. And that's, we were talking about that in the garden. We were recording when we were talking about that. But that is, that's kind of where my mind goes with the crucifixion, is those spiritual sides of what was that like for him. And I don't think we can wrap our minds around it.
No. But there was so much more than just the physical that happened there on that. It was so much more. And like when you look at everything that Jesus said on the cross, I think there's like 7 statements that he made up there. In the moment where he recognized the separation, when that was the only time you hear him actually cry, scream, yell, like, was that moment. Like, when he cried out, my God, why have you forsaken me? It was that point. All the others, Jesus was taking care of his mom.
Yeah.
Look after her. I'm thirsty. It was
How crazy strong is that?
man. The thing that got him, though, the thing that caused him to scream and cry out was that separation.
Yep.
Was the
Wow.
yeah, that was God, man, it's crazy. That just crazy, awesome, crazy, amazing, crazy, love, crazy. So many crazies there.
Do y'all know where the part is where the soldier says, "Truly, this man is the Son of God"?
Turn to Matthew 27. That's going to be down. if you start in verse.
I was just there.
In verse 50, start there. And Jesus cried out again with a loud voice, yielded up his spirit. Behold, the veil of the temple was torn in two from top to bottom. The earth shook, the rocks were split. The tombs were open, and the bodies of the saints who had been fallen asleep were raised. And coming out of the tombs after his resurrection, they entered the holy city and appeared to many. Now the centurion and those who were with him, keeping guard over Jesus, when they saw the earthquake and the things that were happening, became very frightened and said, truly, this was the Son of God.
So now we're kind of back to that thing in the garden. You know, yeah, he said, I am he, and we blew back, but we got dead people coming out of the grave. We got earthquakes.
Skies went black.
Yep, sky went black. There's absolute proof that this man is the Son of God. Even
at that point, you can't deny what you're.
Yep.
I mean, you're seeing.
Now, I still don't think that they thought he was coming back.
Yeah.
But when all this stuff happens, you know, even the soldiers who were just making fun, mocking him, displaying their power over the, you know, they're these big, strong, tough guys, and this little carpenter says he's king of the Jews. They're making fun, and then after all this happened, he's like, "Oh yeah, he was the Son of God." You know, that's another moment where if you're, and we're going to see what happens after this, but you know, if I'm one of those Pharisees, I gotta think that there would be at least a part of me that thought, maybe we made a mistake here.
I imagine, like, as they're sitting in the temple, and it talks about the veil.
And the veil's tore.
I never had growing up. I never realized what that meant. And then, I guess as I've gotten older, I've heard sermons preached on it that in the temple, like, they used to have this huge, thick veil. Thick, like curtain, basically, in this temple that just would go floor to ceiling, and it would separate the holiest of holy places from everyone else. Only the priest once a year could enter into that holy places, because that's where God was, in that holy of the temples. Well, at that moment, the veil tore.
Yeah, it's a symbolic
split.
Yep.
Because now everybody can
There's
come
not
in
a barrier anymore.
Yep.
And, you know, this thing is thick, too.
Yeah.
I heard somebody talking, I don't know if I read this or heard somebody talking about it, but this thing is thick. This is not a curtain like we have over our windows.
Well, the brother Sam that said it would take 2 teams of mules.
Or oxen or something.
Pulling on both
to
sides
rip this apart. So this isn't a coincidence.
Yeah.
You know.
Because they wanted it to be thick, because they didn't want there to be any accident, because what they believed, and it was true, like, if you go into the holiest of holies and you're not supposed to, or you peek behind the curtain, you're struck dead.
Yeah.
Because you can't experience the holiness of God without being, you couldn't. And so they made sure that you couldn't peek behind that curtain.
Yeah.
And it tore from the top to the bottom, it says. I mean, it couldn't be someone was at the bottom with a pair of scissors.
Yeah.
It tore from the top of the temple down.
Yep.
And you wonder, like, what were they thinking sitting in there? The temple, and I just imagine if they're all, I don't know what the temple layout is like, but they're all sitting there, the Pharisees and stuff, and this room that we're not ever supposed to glimpse at, all of a sudden the veil tears, and you're sitting there staring at it, like, I'm about to die.
So then what do you think the symbology is of the veil tearing?
There's no more barrier now between us and God.
Yep. That's so awesome.
Because used to you had to go through the priest.
Yeah.
He had to make her sacrifice for you.
And now we have a
and
direct
even
connection.
if he ever went, would they go in there once a year?
Once a year.
He had to do, you know, it's all laid out of all the things he had to do to enter into the Holy of Holies. Or he struck dead, you know, they'd tie a rope to him. In case he got struck dead, they didn't have to go in there. They'd just pull him out.
Drag him out.
And,
if he didn't do something right, we ain't going to get him.
Right. You know, so there's that barrier's been broke.
Yep. Yeah, and that's
Of course, we couldn't do that. You know, that price has been paid. The barrier is no more.
But man, like
and we take that for granted that
Yeah.
we can just go to God. You know, we can sit on the front porch or whatever and just enter into God's presence. We take that for granted so bad, you know.
I just, man, standing on that, I just can't imagine though, as they were standing around and that happened, the whether it's regret or what, it's like, what have we done though? What have we done?
Yeah.
You know what? I mean, literally, it shook the earth. That it was that big of a deal when he gave up breathed his last, that it shook the earth. Like it.
And at that
changed the
point,
heavens.
everybody around had to understand this is way bigger than anything we ever thought.
You would think there's multiple points where they have to think that.
Yeah.
You know, and still they're trying to keep it from happening. You know, they remember that he said he was going to rise again in 3 days, so they put guards there. They roll a big stone over it. You know, they're still you know,
trying to prevent it.
and you know, part of them's probably thinking, he might be the real deal. Well, let's try to make
this don't
sure.
happen.
you
Yeah,
know.
well, I mean, look at the thieves on the cross. I mean, the
Mm-hmm.
one guy was mocking him. The other guy's like, he's paying the same price for us that we
Yep.
are. We actually deserved it, and he didn't. And what's so cool is, you know, at this guy's on his deathbed, like he's hung on the cross next to Jesus, and he says, "Lord, remember me when you come into your kingdom." And Jesus said, "Assuredly, I say to you, today you will be with me in paradise." So on his last little bit on earth, he even had the opportunity to. It's just amazing. It's like,
Because he got to see
I feel like there's a lot of signs in there
Yeah.
that God loves us so much. Yes, he gave his son, but even in our stupidity, in our disobedience, he gives us so many opportunities to come back to him, to believe in him, to turn to him. Even in many cases, the very last breath or the very last minute of life, he's giving you that last opportunity to say, "Hey, I receive you and I want to be with you." I don't know. That's just so cool to me that, I don't know.
And you brought up the thieves on the cross. Like, that is a prime example of how you can still see all of this, and two people can have two totally different responses. to it.
Right?
Yeah.
Right.
You know, those two thieves on each side, they experienced the earthquake,
same thing.
the
Yeah.
darkness. They've seen him sitting there and the way he dealt with all of it. They were hauled with him down the street. They've seen all of that. And you have one who, from at least what we see, there was no repentance, no,
Yeah.
you know,
He was still mocking him. He was still.
yeah. And then the other who started out mocking him. And that's what it started
Yeah.
out at the beginning. Both of them were mocking him, hurling abuse. But one of them, he saw something that changed his whole way of thinking.
Something changed his mind.
Yeah.
Something changed it. Because I forgot where it was, but I never realized that until a while back, but that they both started out hurling abuses at him.
Mm-hmm.
And by the end of it, one of them had
Totally changed.
whatever it was. I don't know for him what it was. Was it the earthquake? Was it this? Was it that? I don't know. But something changed
Yeah.
for him. Like something made him realize this is the Son of God. Like this is exactly who he says
Yeah.
he is.
And as terrible as these guys were, man, as terrible as these guys were, they still had the opportunity, showing us that no matter where we're at right now, no matter what we've done, whatever, we can be forgiven.
Yeah.
And we can be given that opportunity to spend eternity with Jesus.
Yep.
But we have to turn to him.
Yep, absolutely.
Nothing we've done is too big
Sin
for
is
God.
sin.
Sin is sin.
Whether
Yeah.
it's a white lie or
Murder.
Murder. Yeah, the worst thing. Now there's different consequences
Yeah,
on earth,
absolutely.
but as God sees it, sin is sin.
Yeah. And sin disconnects us from God.
Yep.
Period. Doesn't
Yep.
matter what that sin is.
If you've broken one point of it, what does he say? You've broken
All of it.
Yeah.
And it's a big deal.
Yeah.
Big deal. We're seeing what it cost
Yeah.
right here.
Yeah.
And we're fixing to get to victory.
Yeah. So let's
Yeah.
move. Let's move into the victory part.
Perfect.
Yeah. So
All right, so I'll start out in John, but
Okay.
Mary, let's see. Mary was the first one. The women were the first one to go see him, and me and Courtney has talked about this, and I've read about this. But in that culture, that this is another proof that this is not made up, because in that culture, women were not. Their testimony was not valid, right? You couldn't believe what women say. That's what they thought, So if you were making this up back in the day, women would not have been the first ones to see, right? It would have been somebody creditable. It would have been one of the men. So the women see him first, and they go back and tell the guys, and I won't pick up in verse 6 of John 20. It says, then Simon Peter, following him, went into the sepulchre to see the linen cloths laying, and the napkin. You heard about the napkin stuff? And the napkin was about his head, not lying with the linen clothes, but wrapped together in a place by itself. So it was folded and set by itself. And y'all check me if I'm wrong on this. This is not, I heard this a long time ago, and it was from a preacher. So, I hadn't checked this out, is what I'm saying. But there's symbology there that when you fold a napkin, it means you're coming back. If you wad it up and just throw it down, you're not coming back. And I think this goes back to I think this is something to do with eating.
Yeah, culture.
Yeah, the culture when they were eating, you would fold the napkin. Like if you had to go to the bathroom or had to go do something, you was coming back to finish the meal, you'd fold your napkin, and leave it laying.
Because the servants would be watching to see, like, okay, is he done? Is he finished? Can I clean up yet?
interesting. Okay.
And so it's folded and left by itself, indicating he's coming back.
Yeah. Wow.
So that's
cool.
A little
well,
nugget.
I
there.
mean, and the Bible's full of symbology.
Yeah.
You got to pick up on all those nuggets, and I guess it's where understanding all the ways of the Jews back then and how they did things, and I mean everything was done, for a reason. So understanding it helps you see the bigger picture too, I think.
There's a few things with Mary here, Mary Magdalene. One of the most powerful things is I don't know, I'm not sure where it's at. The angel says, "Why are you looking for the living among the dead?" And that is just. Can you imagine hearing that from my angel? But the part I was going to talk about, and y'all can be looking up wherever you want, but it's still Mary. She's at the tomb. And Jesus is there, but she don't know it's him. And there's all the time these little, I don't know what's happening here. I don't know if he looks different or what's happening. People are not recognizing him right away. I don't know if he's shape shifting. He looks like somebody different, and then all of a sudden they can recognize him.
Or maybe there's some, I don't know. I kind of picture like a bright light. Like glowing in a sense, and maybe it's hindering the full appearance of him. Does
Luke
that make
24:16 says, "But their eyes were prevented from recognizing."
Yeah, yeah.
So I think it was like maybe just a God thing. Maybe he just put that little blinder on,
just so they couldn't recognize him. And so Mary's at the tomb weeping, and Jesus says unto her, "Why, woman, why weepest thou? Whom seekest thou?" So, why are you crying? Who are you looking for? She, supposing him to be the gardener, saith unto him, Sir, if you have borne him hence, tell me where thou hast laid him, and I will take him away. So she's wanting Jesus' body. And Jesus said unto her, Mary. He calls her by name.
Yeah. Yeah, that's so awesome.
How does, man, in that moment, when Jesus calls her by name, man, that he's done that for every one of us. Adam, Brett, Jared. Man, he calls us by name. And when in Luke 24, that was the verse I think earlier, Brett, you were looking for, where he said, Why do you seek the living among the dead? He is not here, but he is risen. Remember how he had spoke these things to you while he was still in Galilee, saying that the Son of Man must be delivered into the hands of sinful men and be crucified, and the third day he'll rise again. And they remembered his words. They remembered what he was talking about. And it was that moment that it was like, I don't know. It was.
Sorry about that.
Yeah, that's.
That hit hard.
Yeah. That's amazing.
But yeah, he calls us all by name. Talk about Emmaus, Adam, because that's kind of funny.
Brett's trying to collect himself. Get something funny in
You know,
there.
and I think this is probably just a good opportunity just to talk about this part of it. Like, whoever's listening to this, wherever you're at in life, this is what victory looks like. This is why Good Friday is good. That's part right there where you get into that he did what he said. He is who he says he is. He did what he said he was going to do. Death was defeated. Death is no more. Death is gone at this point because of the cross, because of Jesus, and with there is, man, there. If you've never, it's just, man, I just got to put out an invitation there, man, because if you've never, maybe you've believed he is God, but man, he makes it so simple that if you're that you come believing he is who he is, that he did what he did, and you make him Lord, you ask him to be Lord, that you want him to be Lord of your life, man, it's just like that thief on the cross. There's salvation for you because of what he did. There's salvation because of what he accomplished. Nothing about me, nothing about you. It's about him. And just, guys, if you're sitting there and most of the people listening to this are going to be believers because you're trying to be a disciple, but maybe there is someone who's never made that decision. Guys, Jesus is King. Resurrection proved it.
Yeah.
It sealed the deal. No questions. Reach out to somebody. If you're sitting there wondering, like, what next? What do I do next? Man, just talk to somebody. Talk to somebody. Maybe your pastor, maybe your friend, maybe reach out, someone on this podcast. Like, just, man, because he is, the resurrection changed everything. Every man dies, but one was resurrected.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the cross is for everybody. You're not sitting home if you're too broken. You feel like, man, I've gone too far. I've done too much. I'm too broken. I've got too much. Man, the cross is for everybody, every race, everywhere. Even when Pilate, it was, when he put the sign above the cross, Jesus was King of the Jews, man, he put it in every known language. They wrote it in multiple languages because it was for everybody. And that's not why Pilate did it, but it was for everybody. The cross was for everybody. And something that just, when me and Leslie, every year we put something that we've just done at home, we put up crosses in our yard. And when we were coming for Easter weekend every year, and when we come home yesterday, Friday, we were pulling in the driveway, and there was a shadow of the cross that was laid from one of the crosses, just the way the sun had ended up shining down on the cross. And it was just a shadow of that cross. And as I was looking at that, man, it really, I guess the word that came up in my mind instantly was, that's the shadow of death, what it looks like. Shadows create fear, they create anxiety. When we can't fully see the thing causing them, but throw some light on them, shadows go away. Because of the cross, when we're children of God, the shadow of death is as close as we'll ever come to the actual thing. Jesus proved it with the resurrection. The shadow of death. The scariness of death, that's as close as we get to it, because as a believer, the shadow is the only thing we'll ever experience. Because Jesus rose from the dead. He overcame it.
Wow. I hope this has given you guys something to think on. And just, man, it got pretty deep. That's awesome. We ready to close this out, or we got anything else that we want to?
I had wanted to talk about the road to Emmaus and the way he pops in on them, and he's kind of, I think it was in Beautiful Outlaw where he brings out that Jesus is. It almost seems like he's playing with them a little bit, and people never talk about that. We see him as not having much of a personality. Everything's black and white. But he goes. I don't guess I'll get into too many of the verses, but he goes on this walk with some of his disciples, his believers, and I forget where they're going. Maybe Damascus. No, they're going to Emmaus. The road to Emmaus, and they stop and they're building a fire, and they ask him. They still don't know it's him, like there's this whatever it is veil that they can't recognize him, and so they ask him to stay with them, and they're sitting by the fire, and they don't recognize who he is. He's asking them why they're sad.
Yeah.
And
kind of playing with them a little bit.
Yeah. And he's like, why are y'all sad? And they're like, have you not heard?
Yeah, where have you been? Like, and you said to them, what things? Like, have you not heard of all the things going on? What things? So they said to him, the things concerning Jesus of Nazareth, who was a prophet, mighty in deed and word before God and all the people. and how the chief priests and our rulers delivered him to the condemned to death, and to be condemned to death, and crucified him. And then he gets down to where, "O foolish ones,
Yeah,
and
that's
slow
what I
of
was
heart to believe in all that the prophets have spoken. Ought not the Christ to have suffered these things and to enter into his glory?" I got to put it in something that I can actually read. This is New King James, and it still talks in that weird talk. But
One verse 21. This is interesting too. But we were hoping that it was he who was going to redeem Israel.
Yeah.
They're like at this
They're
point where their
still-
hope is just
yep.
crushed. But
It's
we were
gone.
hoping that was the guy.
Yep.
We believed that was the guy, and then now it's just like they're using that in the past tense. Like, oh, well, I guess that's
yeah, that idea's gone. It's like, no.
But then, so they sat down and ate, took bread and blessed it and brake and gave to them. And their eyes were open and they knew him, and he vanished out of their sight just like that, you know. I see what he's talking about.
Yeah.
It's like he's going to show you, and then he's gone, you know. And then on down, he appears to his disciples. Let's say they ran all the way back, told them that they had seen him, and they're saying the Lord is risen indeed and hath appeared to Simon. And they told him the things that were done in the way, and how he was known of them in breaking of bread. And as they were just speaking, Jesus himself stood in the midst and said, "Peace be unto you." So that's like the shalom, you know?
Yeah.
But, you know, I got to imagine, you know, if it would have been, I'm not saying he did this, it's reading into it, but, you know, if he just pops in there, I'd have been like, ah!
Yeah, right. Boo! And it says they were terrified and frightened.
Yeah.
They supposed that they saw a spirit. But then he said to
then
him,
he's like, why are you,
"Why are
calm
you
down.
troubled?" Yeah. Why are you troubled, and why do doubts arise in your hearts? Behold, my hands and my feet, that it is I myself. Handle me and see. For a spirit does not have flesh and bones, as you see I have. So he's showing up in, like, physical form.
Yeah.
Man. And then he showed him his hands and feet. While they still did not believe for joy and marveled, he said to them, "Have you any food here?" So
Yeah.
he's,
Yeah,
you
it's
know,
like, you gotta-
like, I'm hungry. You know, I've
I'll
been through a
eat,
lot. Can
you
I
know?
eat? You know. Gave him a piece of broiled fish and some honeycomb.
But yeah, people never really talk
Wow.
about that, and I think you get a little bit of the personality, you know.
Yeah, it's almost
And-
like a playful spirit.
Yeah.
He's got. With
and
him.
he's done it, you know.
Yeah.
He's won, and it's you know, it's good times.
Yeah.
So, of course, we got more bad times coming for the apostles, but you know, it's almost like a relief of victory,
Mm-hmm.
you know. And I don't know, I may be totally off, but that's the way I read it.
Yeah.
I think it would be good. I want to sort of maybe wrap it up with a blessing that was sort of that happened in that same another perspective. But if you go over to John 20, while he was in the room, Jesus appeared to him. But Thomas, but Thomas, one of the 12, starting in verse 24, was not with them when Jesus came. So the other disciples were saying to them, "We have seen the Lord." But he said to them, "Unless I see in his hands the imprint of the nails, and put my finger into the place of the nails, put my hand into his side, I will not believe." And after 8 days, his disciples, they were again inside, and Thomas with them. And Jesus came, the doors having been shut, stood in their midst, and said, "Peace be with you." Then he said, "Thomas, reach here with your finger, see my hands, and reach here with your hand, and put it into my side, and do not be unbelieving, but believing." And Thomas answered and said, "My Lord and my God." Jesus met Thomas where he was.
Man.
He didn't criticize him.
Yeah.
He didn't call him an idiot for, "Man,
Yeah.
what are you thinking?"
Yeah.
But he met him in his weakness, and man, he still does that.
Yep.
Wherever you're at with your weakness, Jesus meets you right there with it. And then a blessing that Jesus finished off with it. Jesus said to him, "Because you have seen me, have you believed? But blessed are those who did not see and yet believe." That's us.
That's
Yeah,
us.
that is
Yep.
us.
That's us.
Yep.
Blessed are those. So, man, that is a blessing that Jesus literally spoke over every one of our lives
Yep.
who are listening to this. Blessed are those who did not see and yet still believed. If you ever wondered, if you've ever had a blessing over you, Jesus spoke one over
Yep.
you. If you're a child of His, because you believe and you did not see it.
And at the end of John 20 here in verse 30, it says, "And truly Jesus did many other signs in the presence of his disciples, which are not written in the book. But these are written that you may believe that Jesus is the Christ, the Son of God, and that believing you may have life in his name." That is awesome.
Yep.
Man, that's awesome.
The God of redemption, salvation, the whole thing, and it, you could go on and on with this, but John 21, Peter denied Jesus 3 times, and in John 21,
Oh, yeah.
talking about redemption,
Yeah.
John 21, starting verse 15. So when they had, when they're out there eating the fish and Jesus made breakfast for them. So when they had finished breakfast, Jesus said to Simon Peter, "Simon, do you love me more than these?" And he said to him, "Yes, Lord, you know that I love you." He said to him a second time, "Tend my lambs." Or he said to him a second time, "Simon, son of John, do you love me?" And he said to him, "Yes, Lord, you know that I love you. Shepherd my sheep." And he said to him a third time, "Simon, son of John, do you love me?" And Peter was grieved because he said it a third time, "Do you love me?" And he said to him, "Lord, you know these things. You know that I love you." And Jesus said to him, "Tend my sheep." Jesus redeemed Peter, I think, in that moment.
Yeah. And this is after all this has took place.
Yeah.
They've seen him, and he pops back up again, and he redoes the fish thing, where they catch all the fish, and then they're just sitting by the fire eating, and he brings him full circle, makes him say 3 times.
Denied him 3 times,
Yep.
and now Jesus has made him state 3 times, reaffirmed his love for him.
Yep.
Man, it's almost like just, it is full circle.
Yep.
Man.
Like, he didn't leave him in the failure. He didn't leave him at the denial. He had 3 times that he asked him. And Peter kept getting aggravated. Why I keep having to say this?
Yeah.
But for each denial, Jesus offered him a redemption there. To reaffirm, "I love you. I love you. I love you." So.
Whew.
What does the brother always say? "The Lord is risen.
He's
He's
risen indeed.
That was like an early, I think Brother Sam's, the way he said it is that that was an early cry after, with the early church in the first century that they would say as a group, "The Lord is risen. He is risen indeed."
Wow.
Man, it's good news.
Yep.
Good news.
All right, Brett, close us out in prayer.
Lord, we thank you for everything you've given us, Lord. We thank you for what you did for us on the cross, and we thank you for the proof that you gave us rising again, and all the prophecies, just everything you did for us, Lord. I can't put into words. Just have your hands on this podcast, please. Let those who need to hear it, help it to get to them. Just thank you so much. Lord, please forgive me for where I failed. And I'm sorry that you had to do that for me. I love you. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen.
Amen. We love you guys. We out. Thank you guys for listening. Check us out on Facebook or Instagram and follow us so you can stay up to date with latest podcast drops and content. Also, feel free to leave us a review on whatever streaming platform you're listening from. We'll catch you next week.